Welcome. In this section, we will be covering the in and outs of Unity Editor, how you will bundle and create your weapon inside it. First of all, there are several things you need to know. First, you have the container bundle, which is like the main bundle you want everything to be in. You have the model prefab, which is just like the weapon itself. You have the animator controller, the static data, the visualizer. Now, visualizer is optional, but I do very highly recommend of having one because we will be dealing with static data, which is related to animation state and animation event behavior. Now, first thing first, let's get down with the simplest one, which is model prefab or visualizer mod prefab. Now, to create a model prefab, it's relatively simple. First, you need to import your FBX that you exported from Blender. In this case, which I have is here. You create the, you go to the rig, create from this model, apply, and then you just drag it into the working scenes. You need to unpack it, create a load group, and a transform link script. Now, in load group, depending on how many LOD you have, if you have only like LOD 0, then what I would do is just basically do it like this. Delete every LOD, make it so that the LOD stays very far and it gets cold. Drag the root game object, add it there, and then you have it set up. If you have, for example, a several LODs like LOD 0, LOD 1, LOD 2, then you just need to create a LOD level. You just need to create it and then put it here and then just remove every LOD that you don't need. That's basically how it does. Yeah. So we have LOD group. Next, let's try to fill out the transform link. Now, transform link is very important because one, it dictates the upper arm of the full body so that it can get attached to the arm. It also handles in some IK related animation, which is the opening doors and then the grip pose for each type of grip. Now, we can fill it manually, but that requires a specific hierarchy. So instead of doing it manually, it's better to do it automatically, which I would recommend you getting the Groovy GUI toolbox. This should have the transforming automation. This is what you need. You just need to drag the game object that has the transform link script, put it there, apply the transform link, and then it will be automatically filled. Now, this is filled according to a specific hierarchy. If you fill it manually and you fill it wrong, there will be some unfortunate fuck up. But yeah, you just need to use that automatic tool. You don't need to do it manually. After transform link is done, we will go to the whole weapon. RPG has a barrel. It's a tube. It's a tube that fires the bullet. Because of that, we will now create a game object that's basically the muzzle flash or like the smoke and stuff like that. Now, usually this stuff goes into the barrel, but if you have a weapon that has a combined barrel in the mesh itself, like in the weapon model itself, then you just need to do this simple step. Go into the content, weapons, WIP, muzzle jet template, and then you just grab whatever you think fits it. So for the RPG, I believe the muzzle flash rifle will fit. Put it there, unpack it, rename it to muzzle flash 000. I've seen BSG not naming it muzzle flash. They just name it like this, but with a clone, which they probably just copied from another item or template. But I usually name it like this because perhaps there might be some weird unforeseen consequences, because I did remember doing it, and then like if you didn't have it as like muzzle flash underscore 000 or 001, the game kind of not like it. But yeah, you just need to put it there, and then you see the script. You just editing the script is very difficult, let's just say it like that. It's complex. I prefer you don't touch it at all. Try not to touch anything, especially the spark, the jet, the fume, haze heater. Like, I don't know much about the data they have, so try to avoid that. But you can also just like remove unnecessary script. For example, because this is the RPG with does not have a muzzle flash, is this jet, I believe, and spark. You just need to remove it. So smoke and fumes. Smoke is basically the think of it as like the smoke that comes out from the front of the barrel, like the small thing that goes up. The fume is the dust that goes out after firing. So we don't need the smoke because we all need the dust. That it is, yeah, I don't know about it, but let's just add it there. Now, to properly position the game object, first thing first is that the way it works is that it's basically inputting the particle, the item or the object from negative y value. Basically, let's just say you want the smoke to pop out to this direction, like here. Then you will need to make sure that the positive y, this one here, like the arrow, is facing the z direction. Now, since we want to have the backblast, we just need to rotate it 180 degrees, put it where you think it's appropriate. Here, there, put it there, and then it should be fine. Fire port, it's the same as like muzzle flash. You just need to like make sure the direction of the y is make sure the direction is like coming out from where you want it to come out. So we want it to come out from the front and then go into the z direction, so you just need to put it like that. It's unnecessary. Yeah, except we want to add the box collider. So for every single mesh you have, you don't need, now the thing is, you don't need to add a box collider to every single mesh. You might add just like the necessary one. For example, the main body, just need to add it to that, and then if there is something else that's like outside this bound, you can add another box collider to that specific mesh. But yeah, you just need to do it for one mesh. You don't need to do it for every mesh, because if it covers the mesh in the bound area, then you don't need it. Now, make sure to disable the box collider, because if you have it enabled, it will be always triggering the box collider. Like, you will slide around in your hideout or your raid, because again, it has a collider, it's intersecting, it doesn't want to be clipping, it wants to be out of touch. You can like deal with the texturing stuff right in this part. So this should cover the model prefab. It should be simple, it's not complex unless you have like a weapon with a barrel attached to the model itself or any other aspect. Okay, since the model prefab is fine, like there is no something bad or like no error, and you're perfectly fine with it, it's basically it's perfect. All you have to do is just grab the root prefab, drag it down to the asset browser, and then you have made a prefab. Alright, in this section of the Unity editor, we will be focusly main about the visualizer prefab, or at least how to create one. Now, creating the visualizer prefab is much more easier in the Unity editor as long as you set it up correctly in the Blender part. And again, it's much more easier because here's how you set it up. So once you got your visualizer prefab, you just import it here into the editor. You grab it. You don't need to set anything up. You can like leave it as is. You don't really need to do anything. You just grab the prefab, unpack it, check the mesh or model, because here the Patreon, or like the round, is a mod attachment, at least from how EFT sees it. So we just need to like parent it into the game object of their corresponding slot. And once you've done everything, you just drag the game object into the asset browser, and then you've made your visualizer. Visualizer is important for animation. It helps you see how the animation blends from one state to another, and it's also how you create the static data event on this animation. Because if you're just using the model itself, you cannot see the hands, which is again essential because animation. But with the visualizer, it's made much easier because you can see the hands, how the hand like touch the weapon, so you can put a audio perhaps, or maybe when like the hand grab the rounds and then pull it out, you can have audio plays at a specific point. And that's basically covers the visual prefab. In this section, we will go over the animator controller for your gun. Now, there are several ways to do this. I usually go with creating one from scratch, but I don't recommend to do that because it's going to take a lot of time and it's very complex. What I do recommend is you grab the animator controller from BSG's weapon bundle. So let's just say you want to create a weapon based on the M4 bundle. That means you just need to grab a animator controller from the M4 bundle of PSG side. This will probably need you to use the asset ripper or Unity asset ripper so that you can like rip the assets into Unity format. Now, as you can see in my asset browser, I do have the FN40GL. Since the RPG is based on the FN40GL, at least bundle and rig wise, I decided to go with that. So here's the animator console rig. You can use the BSG sides, like you can just use the animator controller from BSG, but I prefer making mine from scratch, which basically just means that I use the template that I have here, and I just add my own animation states and blending. I'm not gonna make one from this because I already made one, so I'm just gonna go over that to give you an example. Now, how do you set up the animator controller? It's simple. First, you have the base layer, which we don't use, the hands, the election. Now, it's very important that the hierarchy of the layer is like this. You need to have hands at the very top, L action after the hands layer. Below that, you can add whatever you want. Usually, there are other layers such as catch, stock, hammer, as you can see here, malfunction, and then you have I think that's the only one I remember. But yeah, you have more. If you're planning to have more layer such as the hammer or the stock or maybe malfunction, you will need to add it. They don't need to follow any types of like specific hierarchy, as long as you have them here and then you mask them correctly, then they will work. Now, since animator controller has a mask, we will need to create our mask. previously we have made the model FBX import to create the avatar. So what you want to do is create avatar mask, name it RPG hands example for example, and then you just drag the avatar into it, import it. Now it's important to visualize what is masked here, because if the bone being masked or being like used means that the bone will move in that specific layer. So given that this is hands, that means you want every bone to move. So you just need to like be like this. You need to disable anything, just let it all out, toggle everything. Now avatar that's visible here is only the one that exists in Blender. So since we add a different game object, for example the muzzle flash, it won't appear here since it's only taking the bones list from the import. So you need to remember that if you want to add something that's moving but it's not available in the Blender or like during import, it will not appear. Since we have made our hands avatar mask, you just need to put it there. Put it there, set the blending to override. Overriding means that the it will override whatever layer is like above. So the above layer is the very lowest, the below layer is the very upper. Basically, the lower the layer is, the more priority it gets. For L action, you just need to use the left hand action avatar mask, which is available in the SDK. As for like the animation, you can grab one from BSG, but do remember the way compass animation is made is by using the guns rig for it to be like created. So its animation is taken from guns rig, unlike the other left hand actions, which is like the shield, loot. You can just grab it from like the BSG side. It's like, yeah, additional hands, you can like, it's taken from here. But for a compass, you would usually need to have it in your FBX. You can make it so that it's left hand, but you will need to import the left hands only rig from BSG and then just add the compass animation to it, which is complex. So again, I just recommend you taking the animation from BSG. So let's go over our control once again. As you can see, we have also hammer, which the best way to like fully develop your controller is to just grab one from BSG, the base rig. Like for example, I use the FN40GL as the base, so I just need to grab that controller, see how it's set up, check if there is like anything else in the layer, for example hammer or stock. For the FN40GL it has stock, but I use a hammer because it's a the firing pin, so I'm using this. This is available from the PPSH, and I just follow the PPSH example. Now let's create some basic animation state. So first thing first, a animator control usually has several things. You have the out to idle, idle to out, idle itself, reload related animation, inventory animation, the gesture animation, which is this, the inventory, which is usually just open, close, and then just like idle inventory. Now this will be very difficult because again, if you don't know the basic, which I do recommend you just like take it from BSc unless you know what you're doing, it's going to be problematic because there's also the fact that there is a condition. So let's go over how to make a somewhat semi-functional gun first. The example, let's put it here. The example, create a new state. Let's call this state spawn. Spawn is, think of it as like the gun being out. It's not going into the gun or like this. It's just basically spawning the gun. That's what spawn is. After you go to spawn, you will have idle to out or deploy. Wait, not idle to out to idle or deploy. Then you have idle to out, which is just to holster. Then you have idle. Now, this four stage should make you have a bare bone functionality of the animator controller. Again, it's not fully functional. It's just there to see if you can like pull out the gun and then holster the gun. That's basically what it does. This should be bare bone. After this, you have a gesture, which is named L-action. Gesture or L-action is it works like this. So you go from idle into here, and then it sets the layer weight for L-action, which is this specific layer, into 1, which overrides the left hands part of your arm or gun. And then once it's over, it just goes back into 0. So let's create a transition. Now, from spawn, you want to out to idle because we are deploying. Now, from deploy, you go to idle. And after idle, you can go to either action start or idle to out. You do both because, again, it's idle, which is the centerpiece of the controller. Now, we don't have an animation yet, so let's put our animation. On is out. Yeah. Now, it's important that you disable exit time on spawn or idle because exit time basically just say that how long it takes to transition from one state to another. By disabling exit time, it's basically just like if a condition is met, it will immediately go into that next state. Disable that. I usually set it to 0 because I don't want any transition duration. Set this to active because active means the gun is active. So when you change weapon, let's say from like the M4 into your weapon, it will become active. And by checking if it's active or not, the condition, basically the spawn state will go into this and then into this. Check if it's active or not. You can, there is like much more. You have auto idle arm, which you also need to check from the condition. It's essentially very difficult because you also need to think about the condition of like how does it transition from this state to another. Let's say you want to reload. You create a reload state. Let's just call it reload regular. This is for example. And then you have reload empty. Now, the idle goes into here. It goes into both of them. Now, in order to differentiate between these two states, because again, the states are different, it will have different condition, it will have different animation. So when you reload, think about it, like if you were to reload into regular, what would the condition be? First, it will be that the reload action is triggered, and then check if can the gun be reloaded. Then check again, does the gun have a magazine? 1, 2. Now, if every condition is met, the state from idle, it will go into reload regular. It's basically like an if check condition, but more complex. So what about reload empty? We can do the same. We can like reload. Can it reload? And does it have a magazine? Now, if you think reload magazine, if you think reload empty does have a magazine, you'll be wrong, because usually reload empty means that there is no magazine. So, does it have a magazine? No, it doesn't have a magazine. You also have what was it again? Oh yeah, the bolt catch thing. BIC splits reload into two reload. You have reload in and reload out. It's just an example. After reload in, usually it goes into like idle or bolt catch or just like charge. That basically covers the basic of like somewhat how the animator controller works. It can get pretty intense, it can get a bit confusing because you have different stuff going to different places. Here you have reload, look, reload out, switch, check chamber, discharge. And you have regular, which I don't think it's used, but I like to have a backup condition. Fire empty, start, fire opening inventory. It's best to like explore the condition and what it does, at least like according to your intuition or from BSC animator controller. But this example, you can ignore the web clusterfuck, because let's be honest, this is just how the bundle sees it, not readable in human format. You have this, like you have this. So reload start shell in chamber. Think of the condition. You trigger the reload, and it reload, and then check. Is there a shell in the chamber? If there is, go here. How about start ammo in chamber? Does it have ammo in the chamber? Yes, go here. If it doesn't, go here. So that's basically how you will do animation state condition, and then like the transition of it. It's very complex. That's one thing I will say. It's sometimes some condition doesn't work because of how BSD set up their weapon in the client itself, and then like sometimes it ignores certain condition even though you have it in the animator controller, because of like again how the gun works code wise. So the next step will be to create the animation event, which we will cover in the next section.